What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we got more work to do on the green Tacoma. So as you can see, we finally got our CAN 2 dash back in. I did have this one, I had it hooked up, and the tack was very slow. It would take like 20 seconds to respond. So I sent it back, he fixed it or sent me a new one, and we are gonna hook this back up. So this runs my tack, my glow plug light, and my check engine light. So really easy to hook up. You just stab the wires in. We got power, ground, all the outputs to the cluster, and then also this has a radiator fan output, so I may run this output for my relay for the electronic fan that I put on. But either way, let's get this installed, see if the tack and glow plug and check engine light works. The check engine light did work before. The glow plug light was a little bit weird. It would barely flash on and off, and then that was it. And then the tack, like I said, was really slow. So hopefully this fixes all the issues. Let's throw it in and check it out. All right, that's all there is to it. So if you guys are curious, this has tack output, check engine light output, glow plug output, a power wire here for, you got to connect that if you have a 6-cylinder, then you got CAN high, CAN low, and a ground, and then the main power on the very end for the whole unit. So we are plugged in. Let's fire it up and see what works on the cluster. Well, we got check engine light. Let's check the glow plug light. I believe it was in the center. Yeah, the OD off, but see, you can see it barely flash, which is weird. It did the same thing with the last one. Looks like the tack is working. Still a little bit slow. Huh, that is weird. It's still not as bad, but still slow. Well guys, let's bring it out for a drive and see if anything changes. I doubt it will, but I want to go drive it and kind of see what my RPMs are at and see if it's accurate, and also just drive it again. I seriously haven't even driven it since the last time we brought it out and got it warmed up. So let's go down the road and see what it does. Well, you can see the tack is still not really working. It's actually getting worse. Look at that. See how long it took? And back up. Come on. There you go. So I really don't know what's going on with that. Something to do with that CAN 2 dash, I would assume so. So still waiting to hear back from David about that. All right guys, I have talked to Fast Forward. I'm still waiting for a reply and a fix for that tack. Like I said, it's a little bit better now, but still sometimes it won't even respond, and sometimes it's extremely slow. So something weird is going on with that. What I've been working on now is trying to figure out my brake switch. So initially, I wasn't going to run one, but I know it can cause issues with defueling. And another good thing about having a brake switch is if you're driving and you press on the brake, it will defuel, the ECU will defuel the engine. So if you were to have like a runaway or something and you were to stab the brake, that would definitely help stop the runaway. So I've been trying to figure out a clever way to wire this up. So this is the Volkswagen switch. You can see it's a 4-wire. So how this works, the ECU needs 2 inputs. It needs a 12-volt input at rest, and then once you press the brake and release the switch, it turns to ground. And then the other circuit is when the pedal is up, it should be grounded, and then when you let the pedal down or push the pedal and let the sensor out, it basically switches that to 12 volts. So the two the circuits basically switch, but they have to switch at the same exact time. So I was going to initially try to mount this Volkswagen switch up in there, but then I got to looking at the Toyota switch, and you can see it's right here. So it's got these diagrams are all shown at rest. So with the ignition on and the brake switch or the brake pedal up, one circuit you see is open and one circuit is closed. So this one's getting ignition power. So when you turn the ignition on, power comes through here to the original ECU that I'm no longer using. And then the other circuit is the stop, or for the actual tail light. So it comes through here. When you press on the brake pedal, this contact closes, sends power to the brake light. So you can see here, it runs down to the ECU, and at this connector here, it looks like the 3F connector. If I go to this other diagram right here, this just shows that one circuit of the stop switch. So you can see it comes out and it feeds both tail lights and the third brake light right here. So this actually runs to the ECU. I found that wire. It's up. I'll show you real quick. Not that a lot of you care, but if you are working on a Tacoma, it is, let me grab my light, right up in this ECU plug right here. You can see that wire coming in. If you actually look at the back, it is a green wire. So that wire is hot when you step on the brake. So that is one wire I'm gonna need for the input of the ECU. These are all my wires right here. I gotta figure out which one's which. Hook that up to that wire, and then the other one, we should be able to tap into the wire coming out of the factory Toyota switch and just run a new wire right over to the other wire, the other input into the ECU. So those two wires should make my ECU happy. The cool thing about it is the factory Toyota switch, and it technically should switch the signals at the same exact time. So that should work. I shouldn't have to mount that Volkswagen switch anywhere. So I'm gonna get it all wired up. These codes are deleted in the ECU. So I'm gonna have Malone on the next flash they send me. I'm gonna have them reinstate the all the brake codes and everything, and see if this will work. All right, I want to show you guys just a real tidbit of wiring and how to find these wires. So these are all my cruise control wires that I just snipped out of the harness. They're still connected to the ECU. This right here is a diagram of the brake switch. So there's two circuits. There is the F circuit right there, and then the F47 circuit right there. So you can see S13, that goes to a fuse, and then this other side, this of the F47 is also the power. So these two, you can see F47 goes to the ECU at T94-65. That is the pin. So it's a T94 connector, pin 65 of that connector. And then the other side of F, which also goes to the ECU, T94, same connector, pin 87. So what you can do is it shows the color right there. This one shows RO-SW. So you come over to the little diagram. RO is red, SW is black. So you come up here, and there's the red black. Probably can't see that, it's a little tiny wire. I also, just to double check, I traced it up to the ECU right there and checked the pin, and that is correct. And then the other one, we'll go through again just to show you. WS-RO, come over. WS, white, RO, red, white, red, right there. And I did trace that up. So you can see this switch looks identical to the other switch of the Tacoma. So one is open, one is closed. When you press on the brake pedal, that one closes and that one opens. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this wire out of that connector. I'm gonna extend it. I'm actually gonna put a connector in between these just so I can disconnect it when I pull this harness out. That's what I did with all these other connectors. You can see I got a connector right there, the main fuel pedal connector. That's actually OEM. So I want this harness to be able to unplug and be able to pull the whole harness out of the truck. So I'm gonna take a wire, extend this one from the brake switch, because remember how that brake switch came over here. I'm gonna take that wire, tie that one into, it would be, I believe, ROSW, so the red, black, and then that's the F circuit for the brake lights, and then the F47 circuit is I'm gonna have to get underneath and tap into the other circuit off that brake switch, run a wire over to the white red wire. All right guys, I even have better news for you now. So the other wire that I was going to tap in over at the switch and run over, I actually found right up here. So it's that blue white wire right there. That is the wire that is hot until you press on the pedal, and then this other wire here is hot once you press on the pedal, and then it's grounded when you're off. So we are going to just cut these out of this harness since we're not going to use them, and these plug into the ECU, the Toyota ECU that we're not using. So we're going to cut those wires out, extend them with a connector, and connect them to these two wires here, and we should be good with the brake switch. All right guys, we're all wired up. So this is a connector. You can see I kind of matched the color. So the blue white originally from the switch is now a blue with a red, and then the green white is now a green yellow. But the blue wire hooks up to the white red, and the green wire hooks up to the red black to the ECU. I have verified they do switch. I don't know for a fact if they switch at the exact same time. It probably does in the switch, but I don't know where from the switch. I think this green wire may run through the brake lights. I don't know if it actually goes that far or not until it reaches here. So I won't really know until I get my new flash with the brake stuff enabled on the tune to see if it'll throw any codes. So until then, I guess I won't really know. But if I do have a code, what I'm gonna do is tap into straight from the switch and just run my own new wires right to here. And I'm gonna try that if I do have any issues with this. All right guys, one thing we can check is on VCDS, if you go into group 6, there's the cruise control status and the switch positions. So if I step on the brake, we should see a change in one of these. Oh, there we go, switch position. So you can see it goes from 1000 to 1011. That is showing the ECU is finding my brake switch when I step on the brake. So that is a good sign. All right guys, got this thing running. So one reason I wanted to wire that in is because I thought it may be defueling it, because when you press on this brake pedal, the ECU sees that and it defuels, and without anything connected and not seeing that 12 volts when the pedal is up, I have a slight suspicion the ECU was defueling. So I'm gonna go drive it real quick and just in the driveway and see if there's any difference. Alright guys, let's give her the beans and see what it does. It doesn't really feel much different. Well, I didn't notice any difference driving it yet, but that is a safety feature. Like I said, it does defuel when you step on the brake, so that's going to be a nice feature. Also, I know if you don't have that hooked up, you can get RPM hang. Like when you're shifting, the RPMs will kind of hang and sit there for a little bit. So that's going to potentially solve a few issues. So I'm glad we got that wired up. Once we get the new map in, we'll see if it actually works and see if we don't get any check engine lights. So the next thing on the list is I want to get my AC lines built. So I got a few lines. I got the Volkswagen lines and I got the Toyota lines. One Toyota line is already on the truck. You can see this is the other line that goes from the front condenser. This one plugs in right there and then goes down to the compressor. Now this is going to be kind of hard to film because it's way down on the bottom. There's all this stuff in the way. I think I'll probably pull this intake and maybe the lower intercooler pipe just to get more room down in there. But this is one line here that already kind of is routed down close to the compressor. So my plan is, I have the Volkswagen compressor on there. I'm going to take these lines here. These are for the Volkswagen. I'm going to cut these off and hopefully at least weld these ends onto the Toyota line. So I don't know how thin this stuff is. It might be an absolute pain in the ass to weld, but I'm going to give it a shot. I've seen people do it and it did work. So I'm going to, like I said, pull some of this stuff off, get it out of the way. And I apologize in advance. You're not going to be able to see a whole lot just because there's not a whole lot of room down here. But we'll get this figured out. And also, I do not know if this wire is active right now. This is the Toyota wire from the Tacoma, and this is the activation wire for that compressor to tell it to turn on. But you have to have the system charged in order for this to function. I tried jumping the pressure switch, but it's kind of a weird switch. It's a high-low switch in one, so I wasn't able to really figure that out. So I'm hoping once I get the lines built, I'll charge it, and I really hope that this wire is going to function like it should. It is wired in. The only questions I have is I believe the AC runs into the Tacoma ECU, which I do not have. So with that being said, I don't know if this wire is going to work. We may have to find a workaround for that, but that's in the future. So let's get these lines built. All right, guys, you can see that line right there is looking pretty good. You can see the joint right there. So actually that smaller line fits right inside of that bigger line, nice and snug. So the only issue is it is pretty close to this turbo like I figured it would be. And another thing, I want to get that line cut up and kind of at least half of it onto the compressor, because it looks like the way it's oriented, it's going to come straight and kind of run into this line. So I want to make sure both are going to fit. This one I do kind of want to trim and bend it up a little bit more, see if I can get it a little bit higher and get it away from this turbo. But I want to get the other line in first. So let's do that, get both lines cut up and kind of roughed in, and then we can fine tune it and weld them together. All right, guys, this lower line was very simple. So got hooked up here. This runs down, you can see right there, and then if I can get a shot right there, I cut that top fitting really short and just at 90s right in perfectly. So plenty of clearance, you can see right down in there. So one last thing I'm going to do is do a little more work to this line here, the low side, just to see if I can get it brought up a little bit higher, and so I'm able to pull it away from that turbo. All right, guys, I've got this low side line about as far away from that turbo as I think possible without actually making a complete new line and routing it like up through this area here. I think with some of that reflective heat tape, I think that'll be fine. The turbo does get pretty hot, but I think with some heat tape on this line, I think it'll be okay. So let's get this stuff all cleaned up and see if we can get it welded together. got the lines all welded up, and so far I don't think they leak. What I did was plugged it in. I used compressed air through the other end to pressurize the hose, and then just takes like soapy water and see if there's bubbles. And I did that for quite a while on both lines. See the other weld right there, and I didn't see any bubbles at all. So I think we are good to go. I think we're sealed up. I'm gonna go run to the store, see if I can find any of that heat wrap tape for this upper line, and then also O-rings. I don't have any O-rings for the Volkswagen ends. So once we get those O-rings and get the line wrapped up, we'll throw these on and we should be done with them. All right, we got some heat wrap here, and you can see it's pretty close to the turbo still, but hopefully won't melt with that heat wrap. If you look down there, you can see the lines, everything clears, everything looks pretty good. So let's get the airbox back in, get the intake back on, we should be good. All right, we are all back together. We even got the AC belt on. So I got a couple of questions for you guys. If you have any ideas on how to get this, you know, any way to not melt this line. I think this heat wrap definitely should help, but you see it is pretty close. I mean, the actual turbo, it's got this post hanging off, which, I mean, yeah, it's gonna throw out some heat, but really, other than, I guess, taking the whole line, lengthening the rubber part and coming wrapping around down into like this area instead of where it is now, I don't really see a way of getting that farther away from the turbo. So I guess another thing I could do, I just thought about, is take some aluminum, bolt it onto that turbo, that little post right there. It's actually threaded, and just built a little bit of a heat shield. I guess that might help. But other than that, we're looking pretty good. Also, if you guys are really familiar with this AC system, let me know about this trigger wire for the compressor. I do know that it goes through that weird that high and low pressure switch. It's one switch, but it's the high and the low pressure switch. It's actually inside of the heater box. So I can't get this to activate. Obviously, you need to charge the system. You have to bring it up to pressure in order for the system to send power out of this wire to tell the compressor to turn on. So without actually charging the system, I want to be able to figure out if this is going to work, because like I said earlier, I believe there is a couple of wires that went into the actual Tacoma ECU, which I don't have anymore. So if we have to find a workaround for that, I may need some help. I'm really not very familiar with AC. I've never really screwed with AC. So if you guys have any ideas about this wire or this heat issue, drop a comment down below, let me know. All right guys, we are knocking things off of the list. So very excited. This was one thing I was worried about, is getting these AC lines to fit. And we did it. They fit really good, other than that one little heat issue. Hopefully we won't melt it. So fingers crossed on that one. Also, that brake switch should help out. I don't know yet though. I am still waiting for another map. So once we get the new map in, we can try all that out and see what it does. Hopefully they can figure out this boost issue as well. Well, I'm gonna cut this video right here, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Go smash that thumbs up button, drop a comment, let me know what you think. We'll see you guys in the next video.